The pressure to blurt out your opinions and theories and criticize what you don't think is working. The fear and anxiety of being challenged. Do you really have all the facts and details? Planning for the future and the continuation of heightened emotionality. These are all questions and pressures that this cycle of the human design weather for March 24th to 29th, 2025 will bring. Hello, hello there. I'm Margot Fraser, your guide through the cosmic weather. As a certified human design professional and intuitive coach, I'm on a mission to help you know, live, and love your true nature. In this podcast, Human Design, Whether or Not, we explore the conditioning influences of the planetary motions, the transit field. You can't avoid the conditioning pressures. You'll likely notice their effects playing out around you, but rather than you reacting and being pulled off track, this awareness will empower you to navigate the cycles, staying true to your authentic nature and taking advantage of opportunities when they're correct for you. Okay, before we get into the weather, I want to let you know that I'm going to be offering a short program on the energetic anatomy of plants and their vibrational support for you from a human design perspective. We know how much plants offer us in terms of food and resources for shelter and clothing, so much the oxygen that we breathe. And they carry certain vibrational frequencies, their interpretation through the centers, the channels, the gates that they have. And then as they emit those, there's how we receive it. So we want to look at that because there are ways that we can work with plants to help us with healing, to help support us that doesn't require killing them. And we can actually plant seeds with certain timing to be able to capture certain vibrational frequencies that can support us. So I want to talk about that as well. I've put together a transit calendar that show you when those activations are occurring for plants, so that if you want to try that, if you want to try and grow a plant that you know is going to have a certain vibrational quality that they carry to support you, well, this is going to give you the information to be able to do that. I'm also going to look at how your design interacts with the plant design. Is it companionship that you have? Do you have a special electromagnetic connection? Are you open to just receiving whatever they bring? Yeah, it's going to be really fun. So I'm going to run it next week on Monday, March 31st and Wednesday, April 2nd. Each of those classes will be about 90 minutes. I know it's short notice, but there's an opportunity to plant seeds, to grow a plant that will support your intuition that starts on April 4th. So when I did the transit calendar and saw that, I was like, okay, I want to get this program out there so that those of you who want to try it as soon as possible can do that. You'll find the details at programs.margotgfraser.com/plant vibes. All right. Well, let's get into the weather now. So this cycle starts on March 24th at 44 minutes after midnight, going until March 29th at 5:04 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Universal time coordinates, that's March 24th at 6:44 a.m. until March 29th at 11:04 p.m. Remember to convert that to your own time zone so you know when it starts and ends for you. We always start with the Sun Earth positions because that's 70% of the conditioning field. Now, we're moving into a focus on logic now with both the Sun and Earth activating logic gates. Generally, this is future oriented, looking for those patterns, those formula to carry you reliably and safely into the future. If I do A, B, and C, I'm going to get X. result consistently and reliably, right? Us humans love that when things are consistent and reliable. So it's a cycle that can support you in any planning for the future that you need to do. All right, specifically now, the sun has moved into gate 17, the trait of opinions in the ajna center, second triangle from the top in the body graph. This is our mental awareness center, where all the mind's activities are occurring, the analyzing, the conceptualizing, the comparing, and so on. The keynote for this trait says the ancient law that those who wish to rule must know how to serve. It's part of the collective circuitry, which always carries a theme of impersonal sharing. But in its highest expression, the collective circuitry is about the betterment of humanity, moving us forward in a way that's good for the majority, as many people as possible. It's also about being of service in that. Only in service can you truly organize in a way that betters humanity. This is true leadership. There's so many times when we have leaders that say, this is the way, right? This is the way to a secure future. And it ends up just doing the opposite because it wasn't done out of service to the collective. A little too much ego getting involved. This trait brings the possibility to organize the formula and prepare it for expression in its electromagnetic gate 62 in the throat center, which we actually do have for this full cycle. So I'll talk about that when we get to the channels. Gate 17 is also the gate of the student and the teacher. You have to gather all the facts, and sometimes those will come from others, the research that they've done, and you have to see the patterns. You have to be kind of a student in that way, studying the patterns. As you put all the facts together, you can then become the teacher and express out the theory with the facts and details eventually when it gets to that gate 62 for others to examine. There has to be a logical foundation so that your formula, your theory, your plans can withstand testing and criticism. Remember that this is just a theory at this point. It's just coming from the mind. Others are going to have to take that information and test it practically, experiment with it to see if it really holds up for the majority of people, for the collective in the real world. This is also the gate of the right eye, seeing the patterns in the now and then projecting them into the future. So in other words, does this pattern stand up to, at this point, the mental testing in the various conditions and contexts in which it could be used? So it's going to bring a very busy mind. Watch for that. The mind wanting to plan and understand and figure things out. This trait is rooted in openness to many stimuli, many inputs, many patterns. You have to be open to all different kinds of perspectives if you want to mentally test your theory, your opinions. You have to be open to being challenged so that your opinion can be refined. In its detriment, there's limiting of openness to what is pleasing. I'm only going to be open to the things I'm really interested in, being very narrow about what you have your opinions in. These logical gates tend to be critical, and they're meant to be because they're trying to perfect the pattern. And sometimes, instead of being open to all sorts of patterns, it's just, no, I'm an art critic, right? I'm just critical when it comes to art. That's all I want to put my attention into. The potential opportunities that this brings is to be able to see patterns that perhaps you hadn't before, to be able to develop your opinions on all sorts of things, to plan, to organize, to be open to different perspectives. the cautions here? Well, this trait carries fear and anxiety about being challenged. That can be very motivating on one hand to get your facts in order, right? Fear is not always a negative thing, but it could also move you into mental overwhelm. The polarity can be here of being very disorganized and refusing to take in different perspectives and potential formula. That's something that could also play out. There's a real reminder here to watch for our own confirmation biases. I'm not sure if you've heard of that before, confirmation bias. Our mind has all sorts of different biases. You've probably heard of hindsight bias, right? Well, they should have known that. Anyone could see that. And yet at the time, it wasn't so obvious. Confirmation bias is the way that our mind is wired to take in only the facts that back your theories, that back your opinions, your beliefs, and filter out any of the facts that go against your opinion. Something we really have to watch. Allow yourself with these frequencies to be open. Allow yourself to be challenged. It's healthy, right? Yeah, the ego doesn't like it, but it can really help us get a broader perspective on all sorts of different areas of life so that we can find those best patterns to guide us going forward. The earth has moved into gate 18, the trait of correction. Work on what's been spoiled. Its keynote says the vigilance and determination to uphold and defend basic and fundamental human rights. So here we see that betterment of humanity encapsulated in the actual keynote for this particular trait. Now, Gate 18 is in the splenic center, our most primal awareness center, very associated with our immune system that's always attuned to in the now what's healthy for me or not, what's safe for me or not. And this trait points down to the gate of vitality in the root center. So, gate 18, this trait brings an awareness of what is vital or not, what needs to be corrected in the collective, what's not working. If the correction's not going to bring you a sense of value, if it's not vital, you have to be able to let it go. It's not worth your energy. So there's a discernment piece here. This is a gate that criticizes. So it's going to be a time period where you could find yourself being very critical of things, hearing a lot of criticism around you. Ultimately, in its highest expression, that criticism is towards that betterment of humanity. Okay. So it's a trait that brings the awareness potential to perfect via concentration. Logic is always trying to perfect that formula so that it is really reliable and we can trust it. At the biological level, this trait has an association with our salt concentration in our bodies. So you may find that you're more sensitive to the taste of food and saltiness in this particular cycle. This is a trait that can challenge authority, and sometimes, well, that can get one into trouble. People that have gate 18 in their design can sometimes protest and challenge in ways that do get them in trouble with the powers at be. And depending on the line that is being expressed, in a way, they can't help it. It's in their design. They're here to challenge. There's also a fear of authority here. If the authorities don't have it right, they don't have the right pattern. They're going to lead us down a path that does not serve humanity, that doesn't offer the betterment that's possible through the logic circuitry. The potential opportunities here are to see what needs to be corrected in the collective for that betterment of humanity, of the majority. Whether that's happening, like think about our different collective institutions, our educational system, our justice systems, our political systems, whatever that might be, and whatever level that might be at. So you might really get these knowings in the now. Ooh, that needs to be corrected. That's not working. The cautions here, well, wasting time criticizing what's not of value, getting caught up in that. Although it's meant to look at the collective, it's very easy for this trait and this energy to turn into self criticism or criticizing people around you that haven't asked for your input. Even at home, you really should roll the toothpaste tube from the bottom. That's the right way to do it. The toilet paper, it should come over the top of the roll. That's the right way to do it. All right. The fear of authority and challenge is also here. Now, just to note that while this trait can be very good at seeing the patterns that are not working, it doesn't carry the solutions. So we'll see that actually come in through the next cycle. When we look at these Sun Earth positions together, these two logical traits, there can be impersonal sharing of criticism and opinions that could create friction in relationships if it is taken personally, or if you share without being invited to. All right. Well, let's look at the channels that are being created this cycle. The transit field, when it creates a channel, everyone who doesn't already have it in their design, in their body graph, is receiving the activation of the related traits and qualities. So that's a pretty big impact. Everybody in the world is getting it one way or another. Well, we have our medium-term channel that came in on March 22nd and is going to be here right through this full cycle because it's with the sun's position in that gate 17. It's connecting with its electromagnetic gate 62, the trait of detail in the throat center, which is being activated by Mars. This creates the channel of acceptance, a design of an organizational being. So it's part of that mental logic circuitry, finding those patterns to carry us into the future, what we've just been talking about. The acceptance of logic is here. It's a channel where those theories and opinions of Gate 17 go through that process of getting all the facts, all the details in place to be able to substantiate those opinions and facts, and then be able to articulate them out so that other people can understand your theory, your opinion. It's activating the ajna and the throat centers for everyone. So if you don't normally have those activated, wow, it's really going to be amplified. Very busy mind, planning, thinking, trying to understand. And the throat, yeah, maybe blurting out things that, again, were not invited. The potential opportunities here are to get into the details and organize your facts. So if there's something that you've got to be doing some planning for, or something that you have to present, this is really going to be helpful. It's also really great trait, really great channel for being able to organize people and things. So if it's correct for you, you can take advantage of it in that way. That gate 62 in the throat center is also the gate of naming things. So if you have to name a project, a program, a thing, like whatever it might be, this cycle could be really good for coming up with that. The cautions with this channel, well, blurting out those theories and opinions without being invited to do so. If you haven't got your details and facts in place, you could be challenged. You could be called out. That's never very fun, right? Gate 62 in that throat center, it comes in line one, but that line one has been in detriment. And we've got it through Mars. And Mars can be immature. Mars can be hasty. That came in on March 22nd. It's going until the 25th, and then we'll move into line two. But in that period, there's going to be a tendency to be kind of rebellious and blurt out unsubstantiated opinions without the details and facts to back it up. And that can really create some friction with others. There's always anxiety in the mental traits, and here it's the anxiety of being challenged that could result in making up so-called facts to justify one's opinions in that Mars, hastiness to get your opinion out there. That blurting out of opinions from the pressure, if it's not invited, you're probably going to be talking to the wrong people at the wrong time, and it's not going to be heard. And there can also be this droning on and on with all the details, all the facts that weren't invited in the first place and can be really boring for others. And well, this cycle, you might be on the receiving end of that as well. With any of the mental processes, they do end in the throat. There's no motor there. There's no action to be taken. The mind is here to be what we call an outer authority. It's here to bring through its wisdom, its understanding, all the things that come out of the mental processes and share them with others. And then those who are inspired or stimulated by those can take them and take action on them. It's very rare that what's happening up here is really for us. You have to follow your own strategy and authority. If you don't, it's going to lead to those not self outcomes of anger, frustration, bitterness, disappointment. All right, let's look at our long-term channel. We've been following this for quite some time now. It came in February. It's here with us until April 7th. We have Jupiter in gate 35, the trait of progress and change in the throat center, and it's connecting with its electromagnetic trait of crisis, gate 36 in the solar plexus center, the emotional center. It's being activated right now, gate 36, by both the north node of the moon and Saturn. This creates the channel of transitoriness, the design of a jack of all trades. The rule of thumb is never to repeat an experience. This is the abstract experiential circuitry. Once you have the experience, on to the next experience. That's where that transitoriness comes in. We have the emotional center connecting to the throat center. The emotional center is a motor. It generates the ups and downs of our emotions, and it's also our emotional awareness, our emotional intelligence. Anytime we've got the emotional center, that motor connected right up to the throat, well, there can be some emotional volatility that comes through there. The feelings, right, are coming out. The specific pressure this brings to you is to enter into a new experience or to change. The pressure for change something in your life. Needs to be change out there in the world. The crisis of gate 36 is being a novice at something that, you don't have the experience yet. And when you don't have the experience yet and you think you should, it can bring a sense of inadequacy. So that's something that you could be feeling during this period this channel is activated. The potential opportunity here, if it's correct for you, according to your strategy and authority, to enter into a new experience or to move to the next stage or next phase of an experience you're already in, or to bring something to completion. Yeah, I got the experience now. I can bring it to completion. Getting to that gate 35 up in the throat center. And then you can articulate the change and the progress and how you feel about it. This is a channel where you can share your feelings about your experience. It's a very creative channel. It's the place where you can find all the different ways of experiencing something. How many ways can you use a fork? How many ways can you use a brick? It can be very hot, sexually speaking. Let's try something new. And it's totally impersonal, by the way. It's all about the experience. The cautions here, same as it is with any experiential circuitry, there can't be any expectations about what the experience will bring. The voice that comes out of this can also be, I'm bored, all right? I've got to the end of an experience. I've got the experience. There's nothing new out there. I'm bored. It's also the voice of, I feel. And most often it says, I feel like a change. So again, if you've been feeling that pressure or change, just bring your energy down to your body, follow your strategy and authority. Don't leap into something just because this pressure is there. Okay. We have two channels that are being created by the transit of the moon, which means they're just tasters, they're just samplers. The moon only stays in a gate activating a trait for about 10 to 11 hours, give or take. So it's not very long. It doesn't have a huge impact, but yet good to know that they're there so that if something does come through it, oh, okay, yeah, that channel was there. All right. First one comes in on March 26th at 4:15 a.m. and is going until 1:45 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, that's March 26th at 10:15 a.m., going until 7:45 p.m. We have the moon moving into gate 30, the trait of recognition of feelings, the trait of desire in the solar plexus emotional center. It's connecting with its electromagnetic gate 41, the trait of contraction and decrease in the root center being activated by Pluto. This creates a channel, the channel of recognition of feelings, a design of focused energy, part of that abstract experiential circuitry. And in fact, it's the energy that leads up to that channel of transitoriness that we talked about already. The opportunity here is to get clarity from all the fantasies that you might have had about what your next experiences you want to have, narrowing that down to what is the one that you truly desire. The caution, once again, can't be any expectations. And the other thing with the experiential circuitry is one experience at a time. So there's patience. Anytime we talk about the emotional center, because it's got those ups and downs, it takes time to get clarity and you need to be patient. Our next channel is coming in on March 22nd at 2:42 p.m., going until 11:37 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. That actually takes us into the next cycle. UTC, that's March 29th at 8:42 p.m., going until March 30th at 5:37 a.m. We have the moon moving into gate 51, the trait of shock, connecting with its electromagnetic in the G center, associated with love, identity, and direction in life. Gate 25, the trait of the spirit of the self, of innocence, and universal love that's being activated by Neptune. We actually saw gate 25 in the sun's position in our last cycle there. This is creating the channel of initiation, a design of needing to be first. It's an individual channel that can bring a pulse of knowing through, of what leap to take into the unknown, to stretch yourself, initiating you into a new sense of self, coming more deeply into yourself and being centered in that. This can be very empowering and support you in accepting yourself as you are. This is the opportunity. The caution, well, the design of needing to be first. This can be extremely competitive. And instead of it being competitive with yourself and stretching your own boundaries, it can be shifted into just being competitive out of the ego. All right. That brings us to our long-term transits. The long-term transits are created by the outer planets and the nodes of the moon. They're with us for a longer period of time, years in some cases. So your not self mind could start grabbing onto those, thinking that they're part of you, even when it's something that is not in your own design. They're here to potentially bring wisdom and to learn from, but they can pull you completely off track. Well, we continue to have the emotionality here with that channel of transitoriness being activated. Again, might not be correct for you to enter into a new experience at this time. Gate 35, that trait of progress and change in the throat center, is in line 4 for the first part of this cycle. It's going to be in the fourth line, which is called hunger, until the 26th. And this line of hunger has a developmental theme. We learn as we get older the insatiable appetite for progress. And the fourth lines always are waiting for its opportunity. The exaltation here is change for change's sake, the drive that lessens with age. So it's going to bring an extra boost of you need to make change now. Although as we mature, we do recognize, we don't always have to be making change. So the drive lessens with age. The detriment here says the abuse of position to accumulate perks with the inevitable retribution from those unfairly deprived. The drive for progress that will ultimately step on toes and lead to recrimination. I think that's pretty self explanatory. Ego getting involved. Then on March 26th, just after noon Mountain Daylight Time, it's going to move into line 5, which is called altruism. Also has a learning theme to it that we understand more about as we mature. It says the sacrifice of personal for communal progress. Now, it's going to come in its detriment. And that says, though altruistic and cooperative in general, a personal regret that in interaction, a greater personal expansion had been lost. Progressive communication, but always the sense that personal progress has been sacrificed. Now, Jupiter is activating this trait, and Jupiter tends to bring an expansion of the expression. So, an expansion of that drive for change, or the ego saying there must be change. And there could also be that making altruistic change that does support greater humanity, but feeling like you didn't get what you wanted personally out of the experience. All right, gate 36, the trait of crisis on the other end of that channel of transitoriness in the emotional center, being activated by the north node of the moon and Saturn. Now, the north node's about our perspective and direction. What do we see when we look out in the world? Yeah, we see crisis and change. It's in line 6, which could have you seen that when change is truly needed, when it's out of pure feelings and not the ego desire, for example, it can be transcendent. Or you could see the sorrow and the cynicism that change just leads to more crisis. Saturn brings a different quality to gate 36. It brings limitation, constraints, discipline, consequences. It's in line 1 and it's in detriment. So if you're not being open to the changes that really do need to be made in moving through that crisis of inexperience to experience, well, Saturn's going to bring consequences. You're going to meet with resistance. Saturn can also help you to be disciplined in moving through change. The south node of the moon has to do with what's in our environment, and it's in gate 6. That's the trait of conflict and friction, also in the emotional center, the solar plexus center, part of the tribal circuitry. It's in line 6, which is called the peacemaker, and it's another one that has a learning theme that says the discipline and integrity of a superior force to unilaterally cease conflict, to permit surrender and survival of its foe. The exaltation here is the highest form of reason, is that life is sacred. That's it. Life is sacred. That's reason enough for peace. The detriment, though, is most often what plays out in the not self world. Again, if you're listening to the news, this is what is playing out right now. The detriment says the peacemaker whose actions are just, but terms are unacceptable. The emotional power to end conflict but only after one's conditions have been satisfied. So here we have conditions and conditions that the other side finds is difficult to swallow and to accept. The collective 36 and the tribal gate 6, both in that solar plexus center, they're both social. So going through an experience will inevitably bring friction to relationships that could support growth on the positive side, or things could fall apart and devolve. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Sometimes things are just, it's not a fit. And the relationship is meant to fall apart so that each can go in a different direction that hopefully is aligned with their own unique nature. Gate 23, Uranus position, the trait of assimilation in the throat center is bringing a potential unique and unusual expression that can shift perspectives. However, it's in line 6, which means there can be a reluctance to bring through the expression unless you could see that what you know will really have the impact that you want. There's always the little question with the line 6, will what I know really make a difference? Neptune sitting in gate 25, that individual trait of innocence, spirit of the self, universal love, or the polarity. It's in line 2, which is called the existentialist. And it's about being here now, accepting what is, no matter what shocks come in. Now, Neptune has that watery nature. It veils and it unveils. So it could be veiling of how to connect with that universal love, but it could also unveil the places where you're not accepting of yourself, where you're not being here now, where you're not meeting the unknown in a way that allows you to adapt. Pluto sitting in that gate 41, trait of contraction and decrease in the abstract experiential circuitry down in the root. It's the gate of daydreaming, of fantasizing about the next experience that you want to have. It's also in line 2, which is called caution. And it has a learning theme of humanism tempered by pragmatism, being practical. So you can fantasize all you want, but what's really practical? And because this is part of the collective circuitry, here it could be fantasizing about wanting to help others in some way. This is collective, but then not actually taking any action on it. Or you could want your dreams, your fantasies for humanity to be recognized by others, wanting to get something out of it. There's an expectation there. It's kind of feeding the ego on that side. All right, looking at the traits that are defined by this transit. So everybody I know is getting them one way or another. The channel of transitoriness, the channel of acceptance, that logical channel going from the ajna to the throat. Got that gate 23 in the throat, that gate 6 in the solar plexus emotional center. So when we pull those together, it's going to bring pressure to mentally plan out and organize all the details around the change that you want to make and how to make progress and how to work through peacemaking for any conflicts that come up while assimilating what you know. Or another way you could string those keynotes together is you could resist change and make up all sorts of things about why that is and why you know it won't work while demanding that certain conditions be met before you're going to make any change. Yeah, you can put the keynotes together in different ways, and that just gives you a couple of examples there. Remember, once again, that these traits, if you don't have them in your own design, it's just pressure from the transit field. You can observe it all playing out around you. You can learn from it. But whether there's actually something for you to do is according to your own strategy and authority. So you don't want the conditioning field to be running you, to be puppeting you. That brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. If you want to run your own chart, you can go to jovianarchive.com. If you're new to human design and you just want to understand the body graph at a very high level, what's the black and the red about, the different geometric shapes, want to know a little bit about the background of the human design system, you can grab my free Human Design Basics mini course. It's at margotgfraser.com/human hyphen design. And there's also different opportunities for some of the readings that I offer there as well. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would be very grateful if you could give it a like, maybe subscribe. All right. Well, surfboards are still out to ride these emotional waves. Watch that you're not just jumping into something new, making change in your life out of this pressure rather than your strategy and authority. Expect the potential for a busy mind that wants to plan and organize and delve into details. Use it if it's correct for you. Otherwise, observe it and always make sure the mind's not what's running your life. Remember that there's going to be a lot of criticism in the air, challenges to authority for better or for worse. Do your best not to take anything directed at you personally. There's the potential to really get an awareness of something that does need to be corrected that will serve you and others. All right. Have a great cycle. Be kind to one another. And may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.